So let's start with simple IP addressing. We already know that an IP address is a 32-bit address which contains 4 different octets, each of which being 8 bytes. You're probably quite used to dealing with IP addresses, but I would like to reiterate a couple of things that we must know. Firstly, when we use the decimal representation of an IP address, it is known as the dotted decimal notation. For instance, the address 172.16.30.110 is displayed in a dotted decimal notation. Now this is a very important concept because when we get into things like subnetting, or when we're dealing with classless routing and other advanced topics about IP addresses, it is important to remember that every one of these octets is going to be presented and manipulated individually. The dotted decimal notation separates each of the individual bytes of the IP address. We know that the IP address is going to be very important to us for general IP communications and routing. However, if you're dealing with internet connectivity, apart from ensuring uniqueness of all IP addresses, you'd also need to have what is known as a globally unique IP address for the purposes of using it on the internet. A lot of companies just can't afford to have so many public IP addresses. Such companies use a private addressing scheme and use a function known as Network Address Translation, or NAT, at the perimeter where they connect to their ISP. But IP addresses have to be identified for every host and every network device. We also have to make sure that we have a unique network ID for every physical segment on our network. To do this job effectively, we must understand the difference between the network portion of an address and the host portion of an address. I must stress that this is going to be a key skill that we must master if we ever intend on being effective with things like subnetting. Now let's take a look at the classes so that we can identify these default separations.